So now we're going to move on from shadows and gradients to transformations and animations. So this you can really use to do some pretty cool stuff. But we'll start off with something pretty simple. So let's start with a div with an ID of box. And then we'll take our box and we'll give it a width of 100 pixels and a height of 100 pixels, a background color of red, and just for fun, we'll use the CSS property border radius of 10 pixels to give it slightly rounded corners. And then we're going to see how we can apply a number of different transformations to this box, some of which may seem pretty trivial, but when they get combined with an animation, that's when you'll see the power of them. So we apply a transformation with transform, and then a nice simple one would be translate. And we might want to move it 50 pixels to the right and 50 pixels down. And that just shifts it right and down. Now that might look pretty boring in itself, but when we combine it with a box hover pseudo class and we put the transformation in the pseudo class and we apply a transition property to the box itself, and a classic here would be 1 second and then ease in out. And we'll look at what exactly is going on there in a moment, but let's just see this in action. So now we've got no transformation, but when we hover, the box slowly moves from the animated state to its previous state. And this is the key of how we do animation with CSS transformations. So obviously the 1 second here just describes the time it takes to do the transition. The ease in out means that it starts off slowly, then gets a little bit quicker, and then slows down a bit at the end. So it just gives it a sort of slightly more bouncy feel. If you don't want that bouncy feel, then you can have a linear transition. And that will then move without changing speed from one to the other. If for some reason you want the transition to be quick at the beginning and then ease in and then a linear one after that, you can use ease in. But for the vast majority, probably ease in out is going to look the best. All right, so once you've got that figured out, it's just a matter of practicing the other types of transformation. So we can do rotations using transform rotate. So maybe we want to rotate 40 degrees. So we use 40 deg. And then that will then apply on the hover. You can, of course, apply the transformation to the box itself and just have it appear like that by default if you want to. We don't have to do animations here. It's just a bit more fun when you're practicing to use animations. We can make things bigger or smaller using transform scale. So we give the X transform, so maybe we want to double the size in the X horizontal direction, and maybe we want to quadruple the size in the vertical direction. Let's see that happen. There we go. So you can see it's keeping the center the same there, but it's stretching it out horizontally and twice as much vertically. And the last one I'll show you is a skew, where you can stretch it out different amounts in both directions. So if we try 20 degrees and 30 degrees, let's see what that looks like. Get this sort of weird stretch effect. So again, it's the sort of thing you want to use subtly. You don't want probably to have a big effect like that. But it can just give a user a nice feeling if your buttons respond to their clicks in a nice way. And the scaling can be useful as well. If you've got a lot of information on a page and the user hovers over something, you might want to make that thing a little bigger to make it easier for them to read. So those are 2D transformations, but we can even do 3D transformations. So to make this a little bit clearer, we'll put some text in there this time. And we'll have an Arial font. And we'll center horizontally. And because we're using CSS3, let's get a vertical alignment in there as well. And we can do that using display is flex to use a flex box, which we'll look at in more detail in the next video. But once we've defined the display is flex, we can use align items to center to apply a vertical centering. But if we do that, then instead of using text align is center, we'll need to use justify content center to get our horizontal centering. And of course, that should be font family, not font style. There we go. That's better. Maybe just make it a touch bigger. Great. Maybe even 200. Lovely. So let's apply a 3D transformation now. The first one we'll use will be rotate X. So this rotates around the X or horizontal axis. And let's try 180 degrees. See what that looks like. So you can see we get this flip effect where it even rotates the text as well. Of course, we can do a rotate Y to rotate around the vertical axis. Like that. And a rotate Z to rotate around the imaginary axis coming out of the screen. There we go. And that's the basis of it. You can do, of course, a lot more with CSS3 transformations and animations, but that's as far as we're going to take it here. I've given several links in the document at the end of this chapter if you want to investigate more. And if you do have an arty side and want to start creating fancy animations or recreating complex logos in CSS, which is a popular pastime for many, then those links would be a good place to start. For us though, we're nearly done with CSS3. I've just got a few more things to show you, and we'll do that in the final video of this section when we'll look at layout.